This is Beekeeper Confidential, a show about the curious lives of bees and their beekeepers. I'm your host, Mandy Shaw. Today's guest is a creative powerhouse who has harnessed her talents to build a successful beekeeping business and has established herself as a leader in the industry. I got to spend time with her while she was here in Portland promoting her new book, Queenspotting. I attended her book reading and signing at Powell's bookstore, and afterwards, we visited over cocktails and delicious popcorn. It was really great to spend time getting to know the person behind the fame prior to recording this episode, which was planned for the following day. We had originally planned to have the interview at the International Rose Test Garden, but traffic that day was so gnarly, and when I went to pick her up, I saw how close she was staying to an even better interview spot. So I made a quick phone call to a friend to see if we could use his space for the afternoon, and the rest was history. Friends, meet Hilary Kearney of Girl Next Door Honey. Hilary Kearney, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
We are at Green Anchors, which is where Tim Wessels from the Citizen Scientist episode keeps his bees, and he was generous enough to let us use this space very last minute today, and we're tucked into his little bee house.
Yeah, it's like a Slovenian style bee house with this lovely hexagonal door, and there's 3 hives in here, and their entrances, it's like a kind of like a shed, and their entrances point out. So there's not really any bees in here with us, but the boxes are in here, and we've got this lovely buzz in the background, and it's beautiful. And there's little like wildflowers everywhere, and it's actually raining right now in July. So
yeah,
thanks, Portland.
I don't know about you, but I can smell the beehives.
Yeah, I love that
I can
smell.
smell that
if
sweetness.
only everyone could smell this right now. It's like bread and honey and, I don't know, the propolis
Just
smell.
good.
It's so hard to describe the propolis smell. Just the beehive smell.
When I first got into beekeeping, the one standard that was very important to me was that I allowed the bees to build natural comb. But I was also planning to use Langstroth hives, at least in the beginning. And it was hard for me to find local beekeepers that supported that. But you were one of the beekeepers out in the world that was doing it and gave me the confidence to feel like I can do this and it's totally fine.
That's cool. I love hearing that. It's so weird to have people tell me that kind of stuff. Like, it feels really good because it seems like such a common sense thing that you would just let the bees make their own natural comb. Like, it's so alien to me that people think this is such a radical idea. It's so common. Like, when I first started, I was told that I couldn't do foundationless and that top bar hives were garbage and that, like, I needed to, use foundation and throw away my top bar hives. And I didn't listen to them because I didn't believe them. And I just kind of like walked out of the beekeeper meeting and went, whatever, I'm going to do my own thing. Mm-hmm. And I started with top bar hives, and I did have cross comb and I did have messes. But it was my bar designs were bad. I didn't have good comb guides. So that was a good lesson.
Yeah. What is your favorite type of comb guide to use in your Langstroth hives?
I use paint sticks, and I just nail them into the foundation like groove at the top, mm-hmm. and I paint them with beeswax if I have time.
Yes.
So that is ideal. But some of them, aren't painted because I just don't have time, and they usually still work. But I mean, as far as like my favorite, I would love to see, please, someone, if you're listening, please make this. I want, I would like, I want like what the top bars have. Like, I want that big triangle. I have not seen one that I thought was strong enough. I've seen them on Langstroth Hive frames, but they're such weak little nubs. Like, it's not a strong enough angle. I want like more of an angle on that guide, because it needs to hang down like pretty dramatically in order to have a better success rate with like straight comb, in my opinion. But what's interesting is that if it's too long, if it's too far down, then the bees will start to build comb on either side of it. And so that's what happens like fairly often with the paint sticks. They hang down a little bit too much. I wish they could be like 3/4 of the width that they are. But I'm too lazy to like shave them all down. So I just work with it.
I would hardly label you as lazy.
Okay. I'm too busy.
You are super busy. And I always wonder, do you ever have time for self-care? Because you're out taking care of, dozens and dozens and dozens of beehives. You have mentees that you're working with. You're doing colony rescues. You're marketing. You're running an online store.
Trying to blog.
Yeah.
It's been like several months since I've written a blog post. No, not really. And it's one of the things I'm really working on and like trying to change, because it's just not healthy, and I don't want to burn out, and I don't want to like stop loving what I do, and I'm like in danger of that at this point, because I am getting burnt out, and I am getting like, I'm just a little out of control. Like it's really weird because my husband actually just like said this to me a couple nights ago. We were trying to talk about this, and he was like, it's so interesting because you're the kind of person who is really creative, and you're not really like a classic business person. Like, I'm not the kind of person who likes, scheming to make money or cramming numbers or creating structure and systems for business production. Like, that's not my jam. I hate doing that. I hate answering emails. Like, I hate all of the actual business stuff. I do enjoy doing like marketing, designing, and making things. And I like inspiring people, and I like communicating with people. So I like all of those parts, but I don't really like all these other parts. And so he was saying how it's like you have this like huge drive to like create things and make things, and you can't really stop, and it's just constant. And he was like, I think your brain is like already subconsciously working on whatever your next idea is, and you maybe don't even know. And then just one day it's like, boom, I've got it. And which is, right now in my head, I have like 6 ideas that are like in the lineup of like, this is what I want to do next. But I just don't, I only have one life to live.
Yeah.
But there's also like this monkey on my back of like running the business, which gets very like, I'm over it, And so it's like I simultaneously love it and also like struggle really hard. But that's the duality of everything, I guess.
And that's being an entrepreneur, especially in such a very specific market.
Yeah. I think there's a lot of creative types who have that same struggle of like, you get to a certain point in your success where now you really can't ignore these businessy things anymore. And it's a really hard transition to force yourself to like reconcile these incongruencies in your life. And like it just gets to the point where things get kind of out of control. And that's where I've been at for like a while. And it's a battle to like work my way and make time. I do feel like I'm making progress, but I do things like where I'll say, today I'm going to take the day off. But what I actually end up doing is like working on my next idea. Like I'll spend the whole day like watching movies and working on my next like kids game that I'm making. And that's not really taking the day off at all.
That's so true. I mean, I think I can relate. I have such a hard time just being still. I feel like I have to stay in motion. And if I stop, I'm going to lose momentum. Your momentum is so huge.
Yeah, it's weird because when you do stop, you do kind of lose momentum. But what you gain is perspective, and you gain like you gain so much when you stop and slow down for a second and take a break. And that's when you allow yourself to come up with like the really good ideas, you know? But if you don't take that time to slow down, you're just churning so hard, you can't think anymore. And so, yeah, like I took this trip to Australia and I just got back and here I am already in Portland. Like immediately. I was home for 2 days. And that trip was crazy because it was like originally supposed to be like a honeymoon. Then it got turned into like a conference tour. Then it got turned into like a filming thing with Flow Hive team. And I just like turned to my husband and I was like, this is not a honeymoon. Like we need a real honeymoon. I don't know. We got to do another trip where it doesn't get hijacked by bees. But yeah, that's what happened.
Is there such a thing?
I don't know. It's really hard because, you know, I'm going somewhere and I love documenting things and it's such a part of my nature now to just like constantly be taking pictures and like sharing what I'm doing with people. And I love that. It's fun. But then when I do that, then people are like, they know where I am and they know what I'm doing. And they're like, come visit me or I'm near you or like, can we
come on my podcast?
I wanted to do this. But like there's all these hobbyist beekeepers too, who are not doing awesome podcasts, who are great people and I'd really love to meet them all, but I just can't, you know? Yeah. So there's this kind of like weird guilt that happens when people invite me to do things and it's like, I want to go on your boat with you. That sounds really cool. But like, I also need to like relax and live my life. And there's something about meeting someone that knows you in a professional context. Like it's hard to really be yourself, I guess, you know, because you're kind of, you have your business self and you're like your PR self and then you have your real self.
Yeah.
And so when you're on vacation and you're just trying to relax and you're constantly meeting with people and being you know, you have to behave, I guess.
Well, everything here is confidential.
Yeah. So it's all wonderful and terrible and challenging and exciting all at the same time.
I think that you've provided so much inspiration to beekeepers who want to do something a little bit more with their hobby. And a bee just flew right by your face.
Yeah, that's so awesome to hear. And I love it when people say like, I didn't feel like I could do this and now I feel like I can. And there's always somebody who does that for somebody else. Like for me, when I started, people were telling me you can't do this, you can't do this. And I was just reading as much as I could about bees. I was watching documentaries. I was observing the bees and I was just kind of like, this feels wrong. It feels wrong to give them this foundation. It feels wrong to, you know, put chemicals in the hive. It feels wrong to do all these different manipulations. Like, I just don't want to do this. And I didn't have anyone backing me up. And I didn't have anyone saying like, yeah, you can do that. Everyone was telling me no. But then I found Michael Bush's website and I was like, oh my God, it's like reading all of my own thoughts. Like everything he was saying, it was like, I was thinking that. And then he just teaches so much. And so there's always someone who's giving you the validation. And what's amazing now is that they don't even have to be in your city. Like they can be somewhere else. And people always like to say like, oh, you need a local mentor or like, oh, like you need to have that hands-on guidance and like, don't listen to people on the internet and there's so much misinformation. And it's like, yeah, there is, but you just got to follow your gut and your own instinct and seek out information that resonates with you and whatever's working is working. And it's not necessarily going to come from somebody who's local to your area.
Will you talk about your time at Michael Bush's bee camp?
Yeah. That was also really enlightening. I'd never been to Nebraska. I never thought I would go to Nebraska.
Especially for bees.
Especially for bees. Yeah. That was so funny because it was, at the time I had a really wonderful intern who had been with me for about a year. Her name was Sarah. And, we're friends now and she had to move away, but like it was the kind of relationship where like I would have liked to make her my business partner. Like we just worked so well together. And even though she had only been beekeeping for a year, she was like good at all the things I was bad at, you know. She was like organized and anyway, so it was this kind of like sad time where we were just like enjoying the rest of our beekeeping time together. And somehow I stumbled across Michael Bush's bee camp, which I didn't know existed. And I was like, what? And I was like, this is happening like next month. And I was like, I just like brought it up to her, like, I'm thinking about going. And she was like, let's go. And it was just like really fun for the two of us to like go do this crazy thing together, that it was like kind of the end of her time being able to beekeep with me. And yeah, it was super fun. I especially love that, like, when you go, you get to stay in teepees outside of his house.
That's so cool.
And like, these big, beautiful, like, teepees set up everywhere. But he's such a brilliant guy, and it's so fun to just hang out and talk bees with him on it. You basically just get to have a conversation on a totally different level. And so what struck me while I was there is, like, yeah, I wouldn't go as like a total beginning beekeeper, because you're not going to get the most out of it that you could. I would wait till you have a couple of years of experience under your belt and then go, so that you can really have these super interesting, like, deeper conversations with Michael and all the other people who are there. Because that's also fun, the other beekeepers that are there from all over the place. It's cool because you never know what's going to happen. It's bees. So when I was there, I think Michael was like pretty bummed because like all the bees had swarmed really early, and so a lot of the things he had planned to do, like, we couldn't do because they had swarmed. But we did some grafting, which I'd never actually done before, and we dipped boxes in wax and resin, and
that I've read about that, and it sounds so cool.
Was
it really labor intensive?
It's very time consuming. Like, I didn't know, but it took like 6 hours to heat up and melt all of the wax and resin. So it was hilarious because I was getting a little bit bored. Like, we were working on putting together boxes, and Michael had this group of 3 beekeepers who had been there already for like a week or two, and they were really dedicated to helping him build all of his unassembled equipment. It was like their mission, and I really didn't want to do that because I build equipment at home, and that's not what I was there for. So I was getting really bored. I was like wandering around his property, taking bee pictures, making flower crowns, and just like, I was like, I was like not doing a good job of building the equipment either. Like, the boxes got split, and I was like, I gotta stop doing this. So I kind of went up to him and I was like, let's dip boxes. Like, do you do that? These are all unpainted. What are you going to do with them? And he was like, yeah, we can do that. So we like get in his bee van and we drove to some other property and got like a stove. And then we brought that back. It was like a vintage stove. And we set it up in the middle of like a meadow on his property and just like sat around supervising it for like 6 hours while it melted. And as I said, Sarah and I were making like flower crowns and not paying the most attention to it. And so of course it caught on fire, which was great. And like Michael had left a fire extinguisher with us, and I'm from California. So like when something catches on fire, like, it's a big deal. You put it out right away. It's scary. So we used the fire extinguisher on it. And then he came back and he was like, why did you do that? It would have just burned out. And I was like, well, why did you give us a fire extinguisher then? Like, I don't know. But yeah, once it all got melted, at that point, it was like really dark and late. And like, it was really hilarious because Sarah and I, like, it was my idea to do it. Michael wanted to do it. So we kind of like committed ourselves to like staying up late and doing this, and we're the only 3 out of the whole group, and like everyone tried to come up and like shame Michael for like making us stay up late with him and doing this labor intensive thing. It wasn't really labor intensive, it's just like time consuming. Like, you set the box in the stuff, you wait, and then you take it out, and then you do the next one.
Do you have to dip it more than once?
I can't remember. I think we had to flip it, like the whole thing didn't submerge, so we had to do one half and then flip it to the other half. I don't know if I'm remembering that right.
Oh my gosh.
But, I mean, if you have a vessel, like, deep enough, then you just submerge it. And I don't think you have to do it more than once. You're supposed to, like, leave it in for a certain amount of time. But, yeah, it was funny. His wife came out and was like, you don't have to stay up with him. He's crazy. I can't believe he's making you do this. And, like, you can go to bed. We ended up staying up till, like, 2 a.m. And then I, like, fell asleep on a pile of supers. And I was like, I have to go. I do have to go to bed. I can't do it anymore. I don't even know how late he stayed up trying to do it. But we had like a huge stack of boxes, and I can see. I mean, it takes 6 hours to heat it up. Like, you don't want to just only do like 30 boxes. I mean, you want to do as many as you can. So made sense, you know. But yeah, it was cool. You know, it was like just really good times, like sitting around in his like dining room table and just like talking about bees and going through he has an incredible like library too of all these really cool books. And you know, driving around in the van talking bees. It's just fun.
That's
it's like
so
hard to
cool.
go. It's hard to go wrong, you know. It's just like it's like anything. It's like what you make it too, you know. So it's also like, you know, I could have gone over there and been judgmental and, hey, not all of your hives are foundationless, you know. And that's the other thing. It's like, he's a beekeeper. He's a human being like anyone else, and he's super busy and he works a full-time job. He's not a full-time beekeeper.
He does?
Yes.
How?
I don't know.
Wow. What does he do?
I think he does something with software.
Wow. This is like the Michael Bush expose, the real story.
He travels a lot too. Like when I was there, I was like, you should quit and do bees. And he's like, I can't. And I'm like, yes, you can.
I just had that perception that he's an author, an educator, beekeeper, public speaker, and that's his deal.
No, he is like a full-time other non-beekeeping job. I think that's how he's in the forum so much, because he's on a computer a lot. I used to be like that too. Now I'm never on the computer.
Yeah, I feel like I'm on the computer when I'm editing episodes or if I'm making a little short film or something. But I find myself, especially just in the last couple months, really wanting to pull away from the online discussions about beekeeping. Yeah.
At a certain point, they just repeat themselves, and it's kind of like, what's the point? You know?
Yeah.
Like, I'm not sure any real like progress is coming from it.
Yes.
And it's so easy to be like dismissive and judgmental and like critical on the internet. And so it's hard to have a meaningful conversation with someone. Sometimes when I'm criticized, like, I almost want to be like, give me your phone number. Like, I'm going to call you so that you remember that I'm a human with feelings and like I'm doing the best I can.
Yeah.
But then it's also like, don't waste your energy on that. You've got a lot, you know, everyone has a lot going on. And it's like, arguably, like, do you need to spend your time like trying to talk to every troll, you know?
Right.
No.
And I think remembering that the trolls are ultimately coming from a place of insecurity and jealousy and pain.
Yeah.
That's...
You just try to feel bad for them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Although I've yet to have like a mega troll attack.
The worst thing about that is when it does make you question yourself, because you've been programmed as a woman to like not be sure of yourself and to question yourself constantly already. So like when one person or if it's more than one person, especially, says something about you or questions you or criticizes you, it's really hard like to stay strong and not question yourself and not question whether you are doing the right thing or making the right choice, or whether you are an experienced beekeeper or you actually know what you're doing. And it's not even always men. Like sometimes it's women doing it to other women, and that's like the worst.
People like us have an opportunity to use our voices to lift people up. That's the whole point of this show, is to use this platform to really build people up. Yeah. And be a source of positivity in a world that's can be so negative.
Yeah. It's really hard. I'm struggling with that right now. Like I'm getting to the point where I'm getting it more often, it feels like, all of a sudden. I don't know if it's because I've come out with the book this year and that's making people want to like take me down a notch or something, but I feel like more than previous years, like I've gotten a lot more like negative comments and criticisms or like incidents with people. And I'm the kind of person who doesn't like to take shit. Like that's my natural personality, and I've always been like that. And so my immediate instinct is to like jump all over them or to be really confrontational. but it does still, like, even if I look like super put together and confident about everything, like, it gets to me. It does bother me, and it does make me question myself. And like, what's really annoying is like the first thing that happens when I try to defend myself is like, usually the person attacking me will say, well, you don't know everything, and it's so stupid that you think you know everything. And it's like, when did I say that I know everything? Like, when did I claim that? You know, that's like the first thing. It's like all of these criticisms are often based on like assumptions that like came out of nowhere that like nobody has said, you know? So that's the other annoying thing, is like the basis for the criticisms is like not even like it's not even there. Like, it's just made up in their heads as their like perceived you know, as their insecurities manifest in someone else.
Yeah. And really, at the end of the day, when it comes to beekeeping, it's between you and your bees.
Yeah, I've recently decided that I think it's kind of like raising kids, and I don't have kids, so like this is a little bit maybe out of bounds for me, but it seems like there's so many different ways to raise your kids. There's so many different styles of parenting, and there's more than one thing that works. And everybody's kid is so different and responds to different things, and everybody's in a different environment and has different variables happening in their lives. And so there's not one like solution for every parent, and to say like this is the only way to do something is just kind of insane. And that happens in beekeeping all the time. And you can't ever know everything that, like, you can't ever know what's going on in someone else's beekeeping practices more than they do, unless you're beekeeping with them. So it's kind of like, mind your own damn business. Like,
yes.
You actually don't have all the information about what's happening with my bees and my beekeeping. And so when you get on the internet and try to say, like, I know what's happening in your hives right now, usually you don't. Like, and that's one thing that's like come up a lot for me, because I want to be really transparent with people, and I want to show the whole experience of being a beekeeper. But when it comes to talking about the harder issues, when it comes to talking about things going wrong or losing hives or making mistakes or doing, like, you know, doing something that I regret doing and then learning from it, if I talk about that, I will get so many messages from people mansplaining and criticizing and suggesting like other things that I could have done. It's just like people just jump all over me because they're just waiting for that
looking
chance.
For a chink in the armor.
They're just like, yeah, it drives me insane, because usually what I'm doing is I'm trying to use it as an example. I'm trying to say, this is what happened to me. These are the things that I learned from it. And I'm not actually asking for advice from anyone. I'm just trying to share like an experience. And it's not that I'm against getting advice from people, but I don't like getting advice from people who have no information about my hives or the situation that I had. Like, if you were there and like you saw what was happening, that's totally different from being on the internet and just going like, I think I know what was happening, and I think I know everything, and I think you're wrong, and this is why you're dumb. You know, that drives me nuts. So like, I'm at the point where I'm like, I don't know if I even want to post. Like, there's certain things that I would love to post about, or like crazy, cool, interesting things that happen. But I know that if I post about them, I'm going to have to deal with all of that crap. So I don't always post about it because like I just don't have the mental energy, you know. But it's like, oh, it's too bad, because it would have been a lot of like some real beekeepers would have loved to learn from that.
Yeah.
You know?
I've posted some not so fun things that have happened with beekeeping, and I've had people just say thank you for showing the bad part of it. Or, thank you for sharing that you lost a hive or whatever, or I'm sorry. That's how it should be. Like, that's the response that it should be, inciting, not explanations of what you should have done.
Or questions.
Because we all know, like, we take it so personally and beat ourselves up hard if something goes wrong, or if we've made a mistake, or we've missed something, or could have done something different. And you're right. It's just a lot like parenting.
Yeah. And like, if you ever come across like something like that where somebody's made a mistake and they're like sharing it or whatever, and you want to give advice, and I think that's a natural instinct that beekeepers want to help and give their advice and give their opinions. They love doing that, and I totally get that, and I do that too. But I think what's important and what the piece that is always missing is that they don't ask questions. They just say things and without like really getting the full picture of what's going on. So like if I see something going on with someone and they're sharing about it and I want to say something, before I say anything, I just ask a bunch of questions so that I get some kind of basis for like making any comments. And that's what blows my mind is that I don't see people doing that. I don't see them asking questions. And I'm at the point where I'm like, I don't know if I need to get off Facebook for my own mental health or whatever, but the Facebook beekeeping groups are like so maddening because somebody asks a question and then like 45 people will answer the question. And a lot of times they're all saying the same thing. It's like 12 people already said that. Why do you need to say it again?
Right. And that's what I find myself just wanting to pull away from because there's nothing new here. Yeah. There's no new information. There's no like it's not adding to my experience as a beekeeper.
And that's the absolute problem with it, which is that these groups become so overrun by like beginners and like young into their beekeeping adventures people that like it just becomes like this like whirlpool of confusion, and then like all the experienced beekeepers like retreat out of that scene because they're like it's overwhelming and like you don't learn anything. And when you try to ask like a higher level beekeeping question, and even when you try to like dictate the answers in some way, like saying I don't want to hear answers from anyone who doesn't have like, you know, sometimes I'll see posts they're like, if you have less than 5 hives, like don't answer. Or you know, like if you've been beekeeping less for 4 years, like don't answer. And still people answer. They go like, well, I don't even have hives yet, but let me tell you. It's like, what?
No.
Yeah. And so it's so interesting. I was just in Australia, as I mentioned, and I met a really cool beekeeper while I was there, and she gave a talk. Her name is Vanessa Hu, and if you're on Instagram, she's Mademoiselle Bee. And is there numbers in there? I can't remember, but just Google Mademoiselle, you'll find her. And yeah, she gave this really interesting talk, and she made me question myself a little bit. She made me like second guess the way that I've been talking to other beekeepers, because one of the things she was saying in her talk is like, we're so judgmental, like we're always trying to like kind of like one up each other and like decide where we are in the hierarchy of like beekeepers. And like these are the questions that you always ask beekeepers when you meet them. You always ask, how many hives do you have? How long have you been doing it for? And it's this kind of like yucky establishment questions that like they're not actually like that great of questions to ask people. She's like, why not ask, how did you get into beekeeping? And I was like, that's really nice. That's a good idea, because I've been doing these book signings and I only have like 5 seconds to talk to people. I'm mostly trying to figure out if they have bees or not, so that when I sign their book, like, is it weird that I write good luck with your bees, or like, you know, enjoy your beekeeping adventures, or, you know, I don't know what to write because I don't know them usually. And so I'm trying to like gauge someone so that I know what to write in their book. And I had been asking, how long have you been beekeeping, or how many hives do you have, or, you know, I've been asking those questions. And I was like, it is nicer to say, how did you get into beekeeping? There's just like a lot less judgment there, which is kind of nice. But on the other hand, you know, when you're a beginner and you're trying to get information, like you do kind of want to know like how experienced somebody is when you're getting advice. So it's kind of hard to avoid.
That too. Like I'm in my 4th year. But in my 4 years, I've worked with probably 100 different beehives, just because I've tagged along with people. I've worked at the club apiary, and my own apiary has grown a lot. So I think that also has a lot to do with it, having the experience of working with lots of different colonies.
Right. And so that's one thing that's crazy too that happens online when people are trying to like assert themselves and establish like, you know, trust, or what, I don't know what they're trying to do, but like you can say you've been keeping bees for 2 years And if you have 2 hives, like that means one thing. But if you have 100 hives, that means something totally different.
Yeah.
And so there's just so many different experiences going on, and the number of hives and the number of years you've been beekeeping isn't always going to communicate like how experienced and how much knowledge you actually have. Like I said, my intern that I had for just a year, she'd only been beekeeping for a year, but she was beekeeping with me every day for a year. Like that's completely
that's so
different than being a first year beekeeper by yourself with 2 hives, you know?
Yep.
And I also think, you know, doing bee removals gives you this totally other level of knowledge that not everyone has. And
yeah.
So and you know, if you worked in a lab or if you volunteered with any kind of science organization, that's going to give you like a totally different level of understanding. So there's so many different experiences you can have with
that are like so much more meaningful than experiences on social media and like, and, you know.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, I brought a copy of my book.
Okay.
And I didn't get it signed last night at Powell's because I actually purchased the book directly from your website a while ago. Yeah. And I didn't want to whip it out at Powell's and not walk out without looking like I was buying it. But I brought my book and Hilary's going to sign it for me.
Cool. Yeah. It's funny because I'm going to all these, you know, I'm going to these bookstores, and it's so nice to support independent bookstores. But then the reality is, like, as an author, you just don't really make that much money when your book is sold at a bookstore.
So the very best way to buy Queenspotting is
at girlnextdoorhoney.com.
Ding, ding. You can also pre-order Hilary's newest book, The Little Book of Bees, on her website, as well as educational posters, her children's game called The Story of Bees, hive inspection notebooks, bee suits, and more. If you've been enjoying the show, consider leaving a review and liking and sharing Beekeeper Confidential on social media. This show is 100% listener supported. And if you want to take our relationship to the next level, consider becoming a patron like Helen Cisco and Jennifer Cruis did this month by visiting patreon.com/Mandy Shaw. I want you to know that I appreciate each and every one of you for taking the time to listen to the stories that we share here. Until next time, may the buzz be with you. Beekeeper Confidential is a Waggleworks production and is written and produced by Mandy Shaw.